Hello, everyone. It's Monday night, and I am so delighted to have you join us tonight because tonight I get to introduce you to the woman who has been so impactful for me in writing. In fact, my writing career, to a large extent, goes back to a book signing in April of 2005, where I met the amazing Colleen Coble. But it was my husband who told her that I wanted to write. And as they say, the rest is history. And so if you are not familiar with Colleen Coble, she writes the most amazing romantic suspense and mysteries, and has a beloved series set up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that she's returning to with a book that just released or will release in July. And all of her other books are set in just the most amazing locales, from Oregon to the Gulf Coast, and really just about everywhere. So Colleen, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, Cara. You know, when you were talking about that first time we met, I still remember the deer in the headlights look that you got when Eric said, well, you know, Cara wants to write.
Yeah, that was one of those dreams that I'd had for going back to being a teenager. And Eric and I would talk about it every couple of years, but I still held it very close to my chest. And so it was a little bit of, oh my gosh, how are you going to respond to this? And I'll never forget, you gave me your card and said I should come to ACFW if I really wanted to write. And I got home and I was like, okay, I'm going to email her and I'll never hear back from her, but then I'll know I at least tried. And I swear it was like 5 minutes and you responded. I was shocked.
I'm always on email. Aren't we all as writers? You know?
It's so true. We are, but at the same time, it really is something I come back to because it reminds me how those little things that to us may not seem like such a big deal can make a huge difference to someone who's got this dream that they're kind of holding like this.
But you know, I did too. I held my dream like that, and I didn't tell anybody I wanted to write forever. And most people who knew me had no idea that I had that dream. You know, I would talk to hubby and I'd talk to Dave about it, and you know, but then I really didn't think that I could do anything with it. And I just, you know, when I did start writing, I think I was writing probably 4 or 5 years before I ever said anything, even to my pastor, you know, that I wanted to write or to fringe at church. And then when I finally got that first call from Barber, I screamed so loudly the cat hid under the bed and wouldn't come out for hours. And I called our pastor to tell him, and he wasn't there. And that was in the day of answering machines, and the answering machine picked up. And when he listened to it later, all he heard was this crying, babbling woman, and he thought someone had died and he didn't know who to call back. So,
oh my goodness. And you know, it's so fun because writing is one of those, it's a highly vulnerable act where we're pouring our thoughts and our emotions and all of this energy into something that nobody sees. And like we were just talking about, you know, your third book in this brand new series, that the first book hasn't come out yet, but you're almost done with the third book. Yeah. And so it's like you put all this time and energy into it and you don't even know how people are going to respond. I mean, it's so vulnerable.
You're so vulnerable. And the other thing, you know, it's really hard to differentiate between when somebody doesn't like your book, it feels like they don't like you, you know, because it has that very personal touch to it. And I think part of it is that we pour even who we are into that book. I think that pieces of our own personality pretty much come through in those books. And so if somebody says they didn't like this or that, it feels like, well, you know, you don't like me. And it's really isn't that way. You have to really get a tough skin. You have to toughen up, you know, when you put yourself out there like that. So it's tough. Yeah. It can be hard.
It can. So with your books, one of the things I love about them, whether it's this series, which is the one that just wrapped up and is on the Gulf Shores, or the one that's coming back with Rock Harbor, your setting is a character. How did you make that decision to, you know, really embed your story in a character or your story in a setting where it can't just be moved into another location? And
you know, it wasn't even so much as a conscious decision as it was. That's the kind of stories I liked. I wanted to be so immersed that I've always been a reader from the time I was a little girl, and I've always been love stories that took me away from where I was and plunked me down somewhere else. And I wanted to be able to learn about that place and feel like I was on vacation and I was really in that place. And so it would just kind of evolve naturally. When I started to write, I just did that because I wanted to take my readers with me. So I love that part of writing is, the research, and, you're going to Germany soon, and, all about research. So it's just, there's certain things that you cannot get any other way except going there. When I was writing the Aloha Reef series, we went to Kauai, and I'd been to Oahu, but I didn't know that my first book there was going to be set in Kauai, and I didn't know there were wild chickens running everywhere and crowing at all different times of the day and night, like 1 a.m. So, there's things that you just don't know till you go visit the place. And so anytime I write a novel, I always try to go, and I go sit in coffee shops and local hangouts and truck stops and listen to the local people talk and try to get a feel for what's important there and to the people, and try to pull some of that stuff in.
Well, and that's part of the beauty of going and visiting.
Yeah.
And as I talk to people who've read your books and love them, and there are several of them commenting right now, but one of the things that they love is that idea that, okay, I've been transported. I feel like I'm actually there. Those details, like the chickens running around all the time, that as a reader who hasn't been to Hawaii, I was like, that has to be real, because that's not the kind of thing you would just create on your own. So how do you pick where your next books are going to be set? Because you've literally had them kind of all over, although I don't know that you've done a lot on the East Coast. But
no, I did Maine, and I did North Carolina, and my newest book out is actually set on Jekyll Island in Georgia. But I'm right now, that's a good question, because right now I'm trying to figure out where the next series is going to be set. And so I've been doing a lot of research on things that are interesting to me. Like right now, one of the things I'm super interested in is Cape May in New Jersey. That's where they have all the Victorian homes that they've done as painted ladies. I love the history of that place. I'm going to be doing a book signing in Pawleys Island. So I'm really been delving into the history of Pawleys Island, and I'm kind of intrigued with that. And that might be the setting. I don't know yet. So I've been looking at Yellowstone, so it has to intrigue me first to be able for me to pull my readers with me. It has to be someplace that I really am interested in and curious about, that I want to learn more about, and I got to teach my readers while I can do it. So,
well, and what I've loved about a lot of your series, because I guess you did do the blueberry ones, because those
those were Maine. Mm-hmm.
Those were Maine, but you often are finding these really unique little tidbits, like there are fault lines and there were earthquakes, or there was this interesting like nuclear type of site way back in the day. And then you're pulling those layers in. So do you find that interesting tidbit, or is it more of, this is a place I'd like to travel, and I think other people would like to visit through a book?
I find the tidbits first, usually, because that's what I'm doing right now. But first I research the history. And if there's something in the history that intrigues me, that I could maybe have some reverberations of secrets that come into the present. That's my favorite kind of story. So like the Jekyll Island story that just came out, A Stranger's Game, the Fed was created secretly on Jekyll's Island back in 1910. So, those little things like that just really get my creative juices flowing. And then I try to think of how that might play into something. So that's where it comes from.
But I think that's so interesting, because when I'm writing historicals, it's often that way, where I'm looking for, okay, what's that little piece of history that I don't think a lot of people know about, and that I have to be interested in, but that I think will also engage other people, and they'll go like, oh, I didn't know that. Like when I read A Stranger's Game, I was like, I had no idea. And I'd been to Jekyll Island, but I'd forgotten that the Fed was started there. And I thought, oh, that just made for such a rich layer. And you can't then take the story and move it somewhere else, because that's the only place.
And, that's probably why I started constructing stories the way I did, because I started with historicals, just like you. Mm-hmm. So, you kind of learn to look for those tidbits when you're writing historicals, and that just kind of carried over then when I started writing mysteries. So yeah, that's probably really where it came from, Cara. You just nailed it.
I think that's so fun. And, when I'm writing my legal suspense, there's usually some kind of nugget as well. It'll just be more of a rip from the headlines kind of
Yeah.
a nugget that then I weave with a couple others, and then you get the what if going, and it
So
gets
fun.
really
We need to
fun.
get together and brainstorm again.
We do. So, and where
really terrific ideas.
we do, yes. And we should, because you're getting ready to start a new series. That
That's
would
right.
be
I
so
need
much
help.
fun. So one of the places that we often will brainstorm is at the ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers Conference,
Yep.
which is where you told me to go back in April 2005. And every editor I've ever worked with, I've met at ACFW, but it's also where I learned to write. But what most people probably don't know is that you are the CEO of ACFW and invest tons of time, and have for years, into the future Christian fiction writers through ACFW. Why do you do that? Because you just give so much of your time to making ACFW a really strong organization and conference.
Well, when I first started, I told you, I was secret, just like you. And I didn't even know another writer when I was first writing. And it felt like I had this, that I was weird. I had these people talking to me in my head, and there were no other people like me that cared about nouns and adverbs and all of that. And so, the first time that I went to a conference, it was like, I have found my people. I am not weird. We're all very much alike. Well, I mean, as far as story goes, I mean, some of us are extroverts like you and I, some of them are introverts, and we all just blend together. But you number one, when you're at conference, you do find that you're not so strange, but you also get the opportunity to meet just tons of other writers and editors and agents, and networking is vital in the publishing world. Absolutely vital. You just, especially today, it always has been, but I think it's even more important today than it ever has been, those connections that you make face to face. And I would not be even where I am if it weren't for Mount Hermon Writers Conference. I had gone there, and I have a great agent. I've been with Karen Solom for like 24 years or something like that. We've been together a long time. And she had Without a Trace that she was sending out, and it had landed on Amy McConnell's desk. And Amy, as with, everything, it was a big pile, and she hadn't looked at it yet, but I went to conference, and sitting outside a workshop with Amy McConnell, I pitched that idea to her, and she went back to her office, dug it out, read it, and bought it. And that's one reason I'm going back to Rock Harbor, is Without a Trace will have been out 20 years in 2023. So
oh my gosh,
it was
that's
bought
crazy.
20 years ago this summer when the next Rock Harbor book releases. So it would not have happened but for that conference. I don't know that Amy would have ever gotten around to reading it. They get tons and tons of unsolicited manuscripts, and even though it was coming from a reputable agent, who knows if she really would have picked it up and read it. But we had a face-to-face connection. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens at ACFW. We see that so much, and I will never forget, as long as I live, when you got your first contract at ACFW from Barber. I think I screamed louder than you did.
I think you did, because I was so in shock, and just like, oh my gosh, I think they really just called my name. And I'll never forget that, because it was just such an amazing experience going to ACFW.
Tears in my eyes.
Yeah, I know.
Remembering it.
But going to ACFW in 2005 and watching Mary Keneally get her first contract from Barber, and going, oh my gosh, this really happens. People do actually get book contracts. And then the next year, I was the one who got the first contract at conference. And then the really fun thing is, in 2008, Mary and I both kind of co-won the short historical of the year. And I was just like, oh, this is too much.
Full circle.
It was
so perfect.
But, it's almost the equivalent of, like, I don't know, if you're a actor or an actress and you win an Oscar. I mean, it's just that kind of feeling. And Danielle is going to be coming to ACFW for the first time. So we will
Oh,
definitely be watching for you, Danielle.
come find me, Danielle. Me and Cara both.
Yeah. Well, and she won't be able to avoid me with first time orientation. But and that's
True.
one of the things I love about ACFW. It is a family.
Yeah.
Once you come, I mean, you are part of the family. And that's been one of the hard things the last 2 years is not being able to get together. So
Oh
we
my
are
gosh,
all
it's been so painful.
so excited.
I'm
Yeah,
a
'cause
hugger,
it's just-
so you can't. The virtual conference was fine, but you can't hug people on that thing.
Yeah, it's just not the same. And the
It's not the
workshop
same.
and all the workshops and the gala, all of it's just so much fun. So
And you can find a critique partner usually too. That's where you find other writers that you connect with, that you can bounce ideas off of. Like we start talking about ACFW because you and I almost always brainstorm one evening at ACFW. We'll pull in Robin Carroll and maybe Carrie Stewart Parks or whoever happens to be there. We're brainstorming. So
yeah, which is so much fun. And because we're readers first, I know what your readers expect in your books. You know what my readers expect in my books. And that makes the brainstorming even more magical because it's so giving, because people just are, how can I help you have a better story that your readers are going to love? And that's how I learned layering. If you like my books, it's because I have sat at the feet of Colleen Coble and learned how to add layer after layer after layer. And so much fun.
And again, that was without a trace. My agent, Karen, she kept saying she wouldn't even send it out without a trace out for a solid year. She kept saying, more layers, it needs more layers. And I'm thinking, do I dare tell her? I don't know what layers are. What is it? So I kept trying to glean what she meant in those emails and trying to figure out what to do until I figured out what layers are. And so now that's like, it's super important to me is I try to look at story, not just mine, but like yours or whoever we're brainstorming, and say, okay, what other kind of layers can we put in here to add interest to the reader, to pull them into that story?
Yeah. And that's, it's one of those things that I remember coming to my first ACFW Indiana chapter meeting, and it was the very first one. And I think I'm pretty sure it was at your house. And we're all sitting around a dining room table chatting, and people start talking about POV and RUE. And I'm like, I have no idea what those things are, but I read voraciously. So I kind of instinctively knew, but then translating it into storytelling. And that's where ACFW becomes so helpful. Yeah. But for readers, ACFW is doing something really fun this year where we've added StoryFest. And so why did we do that? Why did the executive board or the board, which includes you and me, why did we decide this was something that was worth adding to ACFW?
Because readers are so important to us. And we love to connect with readers. That's like, especially for you and I, that were extroverts, it's like, give me my readers, get over here and sit down and talk to me. And we were hearing really there was a need out there that readers really wanted to get a chance to meet authors and get to know their favorite authors and get books signed and to get to know us. And we wanted to get to know them. So we decided, okay, we're going to try to fill this need. And it's been a lot of work. And but we can't wait. We just can't wait to see who comes and hug some necks and, get to know those people on the other side of the keyboard, because many of you I already feel like we're friends because we chat on Facebook or whatever, but to be able to see you face to face is going to be pretty darn cool.
Well, and this is a reader's retreat that had been started by Carrie, and now she was like, I don't have the bandwidth to keep doing it. And so it's so fun to be able to kind of partner and take her vision and expand it out with this partnership. Because with ACFW, we're going to have all these authors who are already coming to St. Louis. And so this gives readers a really great opportunity to get to spend a couple of days with some of their favorite authors. And at the same time, if you want to, come to the gala where the Carol Awards are handed out and we get to celebrate readers or writers who don't have their first contract yet, but are getting closer every day to publication. And so it's so much fun. It's one of my favorite.
And if you are coming to StoryFest, do plan to stay for the gala, because that's our Oscars. That is the big award in Christian fiction, and all of the books that you've read are probably up for an award, and you'll see if your favorites get picked or not. And you get your picture taken with your favorite authors there and that kind of thing. It's going to be super fun.
Well, and as someone who's a reader first, I relate with Emily, who's like, as a reader, meeting authors is like meeting celebrities. And I still have that feeling because it doesn't matter who you are. If you write books, you're one of my heroes because it's just so much fun.
It is. It's a totally, I mean, it's just mind-boggling how much our lives have changed since we started writing and getting to know other writers and moving in that world that we had no idea about, you know.
And I love, one of my personal favorites of getting together with readers, whether it's through, you know, library or a book club or whatever format, is y'all as readers always find layers in my books that I didn't even realize were there.
Yeah,
and
right.
That is so fun to me.
Or they're picking up something that the author, the character is dealing with that, yeah, we put that in there, but we didn't really maybe understand how much that it might impact readers and how much that means in a reader's life, that it just reinforced something that they were going through and helped them get through it. I get letters like that all the time. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, and it is so rewarding when that happens. So a lot of chatter about A Stranger's Game and the book clubs that are reading it and things like that. So tell those who are watching or listening who haven't read A Stranger's Game. It's set on Jekyll Island, part of the mysteries around when the Fed was formed, but it's contemporary. So what should readers expect with A Stranger's Game?
Well, it is a standalone. You know, sometimes I'll do a series and then I'll intersperse a little standalone. I'm already have readers saying, "Are you going to do another one of those?" You know, a sequel. Well, no, it's a standalone. Now, I never say never, but you know, right now it's a standalone. But the main character, Tori, she is an heiress to a. You kind of think the Hyatts or you know, a really high level hotel chain, and she goes incognito back to her beginnings because her best friend drowned, and she knew there's no way that she would have drowned because she was afraid of the water. She wouldn't so much put a toe in the water. There's no way that happened, and so she is trying to find that out on her own. And there's and again, this is one of those things that you find out when you're researching. I knew that there was a naval base there, and I got to finding out that they were using sea lions to help the Navy. And now I'd already written a book about dolphins helping the Navy, but I didn't know about sea lions. So, you know, I had to have a sea lion in there.
And it was so fun because what I would say one of your kind of brand items is there's usually some kind of a unique animal that's involved. And so when it was sea lions, I was like, oh my gosh. And the idea that they're used in, you know, that type of way, I was like, this is just incredible.
Next, so I got to have goats. I've been through, I was just telling Cara earlier today, we've had really a kind of a rough spring. Dave's sister, Kathy, died last week. She'd had a stroke, and so we were on death watch at the hospital with hospice for 2 weeks. And one of the nurses, I got to be friends with one of the nurses up there, and she has goats. And so she was telling me all the things that this goat does that she has that's blind in one eye. And I'm thinking, oh man, I got to have a goat in a book. But you get such great ideas from readers, you know, you do it's just so great.
That's so funny because Melissa tags the same way. She's like, baby goats, all about the baby goats. I'm like,
oh, is she?
Yeah, and baby goats are cute. It's when they get bigger that I'm like, I'm not so in love with them anymore. But
that's right. Let me get rid of this over here.
So,
I'll let Dave get it. Sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. So several people, Emily and Karen and several others have chimed in that they have met you at different readers events and how much they have loved that. And so it's one of those things that I think it's this great symbiotic relationship because authors are, I mean, our books aren't anything until readers read them.
Absolutely.
And then the feedback that we get from readers on what's working and what they love is just like, I don't know about you, but to me, it's like air, especially as I'm getting ready to start writing like the wind this summer. those comments.
I'm writing like the wind right now. So this is like a lifeline to me. What? There's readers out there? I get to talk to them a little bit.
Exactly. So
Carrie's a doll. Yeah, if we sat and chatted quite a little while, and many other places too, other than that first time. But yeah, readers are, I mean, I don't know how we even survive without them. And not just picking up our books and reading them, but just the connection with readers is, I mean, I thrive on it. Yeah. I just love it.
Well, and as extroverted writers, writing in and of itself it's a lot of alone time. And so those interactions with readers are just gold. And so
people just assume that if you're a writer, you're an introvert and you're in your pajamas in your house and you barely poke your head out of your house. And that's just not true.
Yeah, it's so not true.
It's about 50-50. I was at a Kilibris event some years back, and James Scott Bell had us divide up by introvert and extrovert on one side of the room, and the other side of the room, we were pretty evenly split. So
yeah, it's surprising.
A lot of us.
Yeah, because I think most people do just go, oh, writers, they like being alone. I don't know if you've seen the new Sandra Bullock movie that's all about a writer. And
I haven't. I got to see that.
Oh, it was so much fun. Really, really enjoyed it. But that's what people think. The person who doesn't want to leave their house and just wants to create stories.
Like Romancing the Stone. That was she was just in her house and very awkward with people. Well, no, some of us actually like being around people.
Exactly. But I had readers commenting on where they think your next series should be set. And
do we have some ideas?
Yeah, and after everybody going, it can't have been 20 years since Rock Harbor, because Without a Trace,
my dears,
I discovered you.
It is, my dears. It was bought in 2002. Without a Trace came out in 2003.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's hard to believe, but it has been 20 years.
That's crazy. So some say you should go back to Alabama, and others are saying you should definitely do New England. And so I've just been rereading and re-listening to a bunch of Lisa Gardner books. So, Boston.
She's my fave.
Yeah, it was funny because as I was leaving reviews on Goodreads, I'm like, oh, look, Colleen read this one. Oh, look, Colleen
read all of Lisa Gardner. She's not a Christian readers out there, just so you know. Yeah, so if you go look up her books, you're gonna, they won't be quite as clean as ours. But man, she's got the best twists and turns of.
That's exactly why I've been rereading them, because I'm like, okay, I got to get ready, because after these two novellas, I'll be writing my next legal suspense. And I was like, okay, I want to get back in that. How do I keep twisting it? How do I keep twisting it? And she's really great at that. So, and someone else says Lake Superior, which I don't know that you've done it. Well, Lake Superior.
Rock Harbor's on Lake Superior.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So maybe you should do something like on the.
I could go over to Minnesota, with Lake Superior, but right now I'm in Michigan, Lake Superior, in the UP. But yeah, I love Lake Superior, and it's so cold. And I know so many things about Lake Superior that are so interesting. Like the reason that bodies you don't find bodies is it's so cold, and so they don't float. Great tidbit.
Oh my gosh, you don't even have to have a
legends up there, the Wendigo, and all these cool legends up there that I just love. So that whole area up there I love it.
Well, and Yellowstone could be really appealing too.
Yeah. Well, one of the girls from our church just got a part-time job. It's a seasonal job, and her mom just took her out there yesterday. So she's going to be working at Yellowstone at Old Faithful at the concession stand or the restaurant that's there. So Emily should be able to give me lots of information about it.
Oh my gosh. And every off moment, she could be taking photos for you and coming up with really cool spots.
And people at church yesterday were already saying, when I said something about, I've thought about setting a book in Yellowstone. Our pastor's wife, my good friend Carolyn, she said, and maybe somebody dies in the dorm, and so she was already giving me ideas of the possible murder, how that kicks it off. It was so funny.
Oh, that's so funny.
From Carolyn.
Well, and you're like, she looks so sweet.
She looks so sweet, and she's coming up with murder plots for me.
That's awesome. I love it. So I know it's hard to believe, but our 30 minutes is up.
Seriously? Oh, it's gone already.
And someone mentioned the Finnish Riviera. So I don't know if that's in the United States.
The French Riviera? No.
No, the Finnish.
Oh, the Finnish Riviera. Well, my Rock Harbor books are up there in the Finnish area. So by Finnish Riviera, I'm not sure where she means, but there's a very strong Finnish component up there. And if you know of another place, tell me, because you know how I love the Finns. And I've been to Finland, and
that was one of the fun things when I was reading the book that's coming out in July, is just getting back into all of that, and the characters that I love from the Rock Harbor series. And you'd better be careful about saying never, because you've come back to Rock Harbor several times now.
Well, Rock Harbor was supposed to be 3 books, and I think there were 7 at the last count, and now I'm doing 3 more. So yeah,
it's very, I've definitely learned never.
Well, readers just kept asking for more. They just kept asking for more and asking for more. And again, that relationship with readers is special to me. And when readers keep saying, I want more of this, then I listen. So
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And
thanks for having me, Cara. It's always great to see your beautiful face.
Thank you. And if you haven't read any of Colleen's books, then her brand new one, A Stranger's Game, is a great one to start with. It's a standalone, and most of her books are series. And I can't think of one that's disappointed me. They've all been great and just pull you through. So highly, highly recommend her books.